session of Irish History from the Hedgerow at the Irish Roots Cafe, produced by IrishRoots.com with Peter Riley Adams and Michael O'Loughlin. Find a spot on the warm, sunny side of the hedgerow now. Today's session is about to begin. Well, we're on the road with the Irish Hedge School today. One more time, we're covering every county in Ireland, and today we've got a treat because we're covering County Limerick. And if you've listened to our other Hedge School session, we talked about the role Limerick played with the Vikings and Brian Boru, and that was pretty prominent. And then, of course, the Treaty of Limerick, which is in everybody's mind who knows the history of Ireland. So it's going to be a real treat, and we're going to start it off with a song that's really part of Limerick heritage and history. Peter?
Limerick, you're a lady, your Shannon waters, tears of joys that flow. The beauty that surrounds you, I'll take it with me, love, where'er I go. While waking in the arms of distant waters, a new day finds me far away from home. And Limerick, you're my lady, the one true love that I have ever known. As children, you and I spent endless days of fun in winter's snow or summer's golden sun. We fished in silver streams, the fabric of our dreams was fashioned by your loveliness, and so I have to say, oh Limerick, you're a lady, your Shannon waters, tears of joys that flow. The beauty that surrounds you, I'll take it with me, love, where'er I go. While waking in the arms of distant waters, a new day finds me far away from home. And Limerick, you're my lady, the one true love that I have ever known. Ah, Limerick, the green heartland of the province of Munster. It's a great county. Most people think that Shannon Airport is there because as you come into Ireland on the Shannon side, it's right, the Shannon River is on the north of Limerick. You come right on into it. And leaving from the airport, you know, you can go north or south. You either going on a Limerick or in, because it's in, the airport's in Clare, and you come a little south, and there you are in Limerick. And it's so close to everything in Limerick, and so most people think that it's right there.
Well, and the old geographical division of Thomond, which you have to know if you're researching, Clare and Limerick were tied together under that, and of course that included the rule of Brian Boru as well.
That's right, and an interesting thing about Limerick is that, you know, though it's the county and it's in the heartland of Munster, it was actually, the county is named after the city of Limerick. And the city was originally on some islands, smaller little islands, and it's kind of as it was when, you know, with the Vikings and with the Irish themselves, and they protected themselves using the rivers. And the Shannon Estuary on the northwest and the Galtees on the southeast. Limerick has everything you want. It's one of those beautiful counties, yet I do believe when you look at all the itineraries of where people might want to go, Limerick doesn't always get put into it. It's almost left out. And it's left out for various reasons. Limerick City is a very industrial city.
Yes, yeah, I've had several people say, well, that just looks like an industrial city and the streets aren't as clean as some of the other cities. And they forget that it's still a very important part of Ireland. And most anciently, Limerick City was called Limerick of the Ships. And of course, that had a lot to do with the Viking settlement. The Vikings from the Hebrides made a colony there and really settled into Irish culture and battled with and against the Irish chiefs all the way back to the 9th to 11th centuries.
Well, an interesting thing is that they say that there is evidence that in the area of Lough Derg, East Limerick, that humans, were there about 3000 BC. They were Mesolithic people, and they lived by hunting, fishing, food gathering. But the real development probably didn't happen until Christian times. So, and Limerick with the port is very important. And we've mentioned this so many other times before, how important the port cities are. And of course, what that gains for you. Because others, when they come, if they can come in and there's a harbor, and it's right, there's the Shannon too. Limerick City sits on the Shannon, and you can actually walk along the Shannon River, being and look across and see the other counties, but walk right through. It goes right there on the north, so it became a very, very important part of the development of Ireland, especially, well, obviously on the west side.
And it was an important military port too, really, and the English really reinforced that after the 17th century and the troubles there. They made that a permanent post for some time.
They did, and Limerick, it's the 10th largest of Ireland's 32 counties. That's given the whole country in area, that is, and it's the 7th in terms of population, and it's the 5th largest in Munster. I remember in the province of Munster. And, of course, the Shannon flows through the Limerick city. And then, of course, it's on the Atlantic, is right there. It would be further down. So Limerick, the county of Limerick, is really important in terms of a lot of transportation, especially coming from other places. And at Foynes, they also have the Flying Boat Museum.
Well, I wonder if Howard Hughes got involved in that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Or, I haven't heard Limerick claim yet that they invented the Irish coffee, but no. Shannon Airport surely did.
But they say that, don't they?
Yes, they do.
It happened, and it happened when it first opened there.
Yes.
And Shannon Airport opened what, 48?
Something like that.
And so Foynes is where they were, and it was a base for others during the war, even though Ireland was neutral. It was also a base for people to come in to get to assist then into Europe.
Yeah, well,
the American forces.
That museum then would be a place to stop if you're interested in air history in Ireland.
A wonderful place to stop.
Yes,
absolutely beautiful. That's another thing people don't realize the history in Limerick. And remembering in present day Limerick, I took the bus into Limerick City, and I went to the bus station, and the bus did. I happened to be on the bus. I was on my way to Shannon Airport, and we stopped at a stoplight, street light, and as I looked out of the bus and at the very large buildings, I had a sense of being in New York. It's not very wide in terms of number of blocks, in terms of that because of the ocean and because of the river, but there's some old buildings there. Mm-hmm. And very wide streets, Patrick Street and O'Connell Street, of course, but it gives you that old sense that those buildings have been there a long time, and it didn't suffer some of the damage that was suffered with Dublin and Cork in the risings. The county seat of County Limerick is Limerick City, and it's about 1,037 square miles. I did the county anthem, so to speak, with Limerick, You're a Lady. And it's a beautiful song. I love it. And the motto for Limerick is Remember Limerick. And if you think about the things with Limerick, if you go down in the Shannon in Limerick City, you'll see King John's Castle, and you'll see the Treaty Stone. And we've spoken about the Treaty Stone in some historical notions.
Well, and remember, out of all the books they wanted in the Hedge School, what was found there, one of the most popular books that they held on to was the Treaty of Limerick, given the Articles of Limerick, I guess, how the treaty was settled. And that was one of the most popular little booklets that they brought to school to learn from. And, they say that the 4 chief places in Limerick, namely Kilmallock, Askeaton, Rathkeale, and Newcastle, they were forfeited after the death of the Earl of Desmond in the reign of Queen Elizabeth. And that started something that wasn't too good for the native Irish, because the wars of 1641 and 1688 led to more confiscations and more new names coming into the county and old names getting dispossessed, so to speak.
I think it was because people were traveling in and out, and because of the port and other names and the divisions that occurred. There's of others who had been there with old Irish names, and I mean in Gaelic names. You also find that there's earthworks of the Dun Echor, which still remain, can be found close to the modern city of, and we've mentioned this one before, Brewery,
Oh, yes.
which of course is where De Valera is from. But it was a center. Christianity came to Limerick probably in the 5th century, of course, with St. Patrick and others. And then you had some very important monasteries established there. Adare Patrick, Mongret, and Killedy. And you mentioned before about other monasteries. But, the Shannon is so important because nobody ever went too far in this particular area from there because you wanted to be close to the river, and the river gave you all sorts of advantages.
The trade and the money.
And fish.
Yeah, yes, food to
Food.
eat. Yes.
So, it's always kind of a great part to be there. Actually, the county itself, after the Normans taking control, it was in 1210, that the county of Limerick was formally established.
Well, and just before that, you want to know some of those leading Irish families that got dispossessed. Well, you're talking about the Hurleys and the Sheehees, the Gormans, the Collins, the Coynes, the Scanlons, and the Hallinans, just to name a few. I'll put more of them on the blog there so you can read them. I'd take half a program here to read all those names, but those are some of the well-known families that were there.
Limerick, I suppose, was probably very attractive to the city. It came up, it's a very large green heartland of Munster. And the name, there is a translation of the name, very interesting, called the Flat Area. If we were to take the Irish word, which is anglicized under Limerick, it's the Flat Area. And it probably makes sense compared to some of the rest of the province, with the hills and the burren that's to the south and there. And so it gives you an idea of some of the things there. Limerick City has also been known as the City of the Broken Treaty. And we talked about that with the Limerick Treaty, but the City of the Broken Treaty. Now, Limerick is very famous for the dairy produce. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to economics, we know that tourism is so important to so many, but as I said, people have always not seemed to go to Limerick as a tourist center, but it had to be used as other things that grew up, and one of that was with dairy. There's other rivers there. There's the Mulkeer, the Lough, the Maggie, the Deal, and the Feel. And they're all, of course, tributaries of the Shannon. And if you go further up northeast Limerick, you have Lough Derg, a beautiful lake, and it hits Tipperary, it hits Galway, it hits Limerick. Stayed on Lough Derg this past year. Beautiful place. And Limerick itself, it's a very enamored place. And the more you travel through it, you'll start to say, wait a minute, I think I like this one, even though you don't find all the tours and everybody going there. The kind of things that happen. Or what are some of the cities that are there? There's one city not too far. As you come in, after leaving Limerick, you come to Adare. And Adare is very popular because it's where you start finding the thatch roof houses.
Very pretty town.
Beautiful little town.
It's a nice stop. On some of my tours, I've stopped there, and it's always been a nice, restful little stop.
It absolutely is. And just to walk around and see the way and the thickness of the thatch on those is very beautiful. Also, Limerick is an important center of higher education, along with Dublin and Cork, of course. But there is a tremendous university there in Limerick, and it has a population of 13,000.
Yeah, and there's a heritage center down there, too, for people tracing their roots. They can go into that heritage center, and that was one of the early places that people could go to research. I think Clare was one of the very first heritage centers focused on genealogy, and Limerick came in there real close, too. They got computerized way ahead of the rest of the country.
Now, one of the other things, there is, because there's an Institute of Technology in Limerick. And that is why it became a center for other things. There has been a great emphasis in Limerick to try to build this up. They did have a reputation with crime. And people who would really know, maybe even your first awareness of Limerick was with Frank McCourt's Angela's Ashes.
Right.
Because, that was all taking place in his early years in Limerick. And I remember in first seeing the film and reading the book, it gave you a very sad feeling about that part of the country.
Yes, it wasn't romantic at all.
Not at all. And it almost, even though not being romantic, it showed you, in a sense, a romantic side of poverty.
Yes.
Or, it was just a terrible thing. And it caused that feeling of people, well, we won't go to Limerick. We'd rather go to Dublin because of it's the capital city, and we'll want to go down to Kerry and where the hills are. We go to Cork where the ports are, but Limerick. So Limerick, I think, is the unfound jewel. The countryside is absolutely tremendous. There's nothing you can be of want. The stores and the main streets of Limerick are beautiful.
I also, you're talking about all that, and I thought about, Clare is right next to him there, and there was a band of soldiers that were supposed to settle along that Clare border to separate them from the rest of the country, and several baronies in Limerick were given to the soldiers in the Cromwellian settlement of Ireland. Whether it worked or not, I'm not too sure, but these were people like Colonels Chidley and Coote and Ormsby, King, St. George, Jones, and Eudes. These are some different names for that county, and family researchers also might want to know that there's some there was a Palatine settlement that came in the early 18th century. I've got a lot of special names there on the blog too, and they're all taken from the Families of County Limerick book that I wrote several years back. And you might even find something very unusual because the Palatines did come to Ireland and they did move on to America. And a strange thing is you got to keep your eye out for some first names when you're researching at times. And some popular first names for the Palatines, which might tip you off, are names like Nehemiah and Christopher, Adam, Jacob, Jethro, Julius, and Ebenezer. And for women, Dorothy was a common name. So those are just a few little tips for researchers or just the curious when they see some names that they don't quite understand. What's that doing in Limerick? Well, there was a cosmetology. I'm going to recut this.
Yeah, you bet.
There was a very big-time feeling towards settlement in Limerick, and several cultures did settle there. So that's one more thing that makes this county unique.
Oh, when we talk about the city and the city or the county, the city itself, it dates back to the Viking settlement of 812. And then the Normans, they redesigned the city probably, in the 12th century. And then they added much of some of the architecture that came in later. King John's Castle, St. Mary's Cathedral. And then, of course, in the Civil Wars, it played a vital role. There was a siege by Mr. Cromwell, and twice in the Williamite Wars. So Limerick, though, grew rich in trade in the 18th century because there it is sitting on the Shannon. And so that's very important. And all along, the Shannon is the northern border for Limerick, right at the point where it also hits the Atlantic. And the Act of Union changed some things, and the famine caused a terrible economic breakdown, and Limerick, actually, until the 1990s, still suffered from that.
Yes, as did most of Ireland. It was a terrible time. And there was a lot of early connections with America in Limerick, and we forgot about that really for the most part. But the arrival of Limerick Bacon was news in some of the early newspapers in America. And you even find that Limerick's mentioned, here's something from an article. It says, in 1656, several families arriving from New England at Limerick had the excise of tobacco brought with them for the use of themselves and families remitted. So they were bringing back some tobacco from America, and they were noted for bringing Limerick Bacon over. That's just one little example.
Well, and when you say how many people came and went, now there's in the Limerick city, there's 90,000 people, and there's about 130,000 people in the county. And when we look back historically, look to the famine years, there was 48,300 to start, but 10 years later, it had increased in population. Once again, we've thought about this as because it's ports, because it's a city, things are going to increase, and people were leaving the other urban area, or no, rather suburban areas, or the agricultural areas, leaving them and going more towards the cities.
They might have wanted that port to get out of Ireland with.
That's right.
And there might have been a better poorhouse there that had a little bit better gruel for dinner if you had to eat food or send your child to. So that all would have contributed to it, I believe. And, we're also talking about, let's look at some places that were named Limerick in early America. There was Limerick Township in early Pennsylvania, and that was called that as early as 1722. And it was also said that they called it right after the city and the county in Ireland. And there weren't many people there, of course, but in 1741, it did have 58 taxables, or persons. One of those was Constantine O'Neill. And 3 old villages in that area were known as Limerick Square, Limerick Church, and Limerickville. So that tells you there's a strong connection there early, of course, before 1776. And there were some 10 other Limerick place names that were noted to exist in an article I found in the Journal of the American Irish Historical Society, Volume 27. Now, there's also one other connection I'll have to say about America. A lot of excellent research done on the ties between Askeaton, which is in County Limerick, and it's really a tale of 2 Askeatons. And there's several books been written, one was Askeaton from Old Sod to New, and that was published in 1978. But there was a settlement that came from Askeaton in Ireland, and it was a band of Irish immigrants from Limerick. And in 1849, they landed in New York and worked their way west, and they found the town of Askeaton and named it after their hometown in Limerick. And it's late today, or in later day times, it's found really within the modern day boundaries of the town of Holland, Wisconsin. And some of the names of families that left there, that gathered in Limerick and then left, were Summers and Wall and Meehan, Carroll, McQueen, Clune, Brick, and Clancy. And later waves of immigrants just kept on coming. You know how that is. Peter talked earlier on the immigration podcast for the Hedge School, and he talked about how you'd send letters back and people would come to join you. They'd migrate towards people where they knew there was a welcome, and this would have been the case there. And that story is representative of quite a few that came in during the famine era, Peter.
Well, one of the things about Limerick also, we said it was the green heartland of Munster, but there's also mountains on the borders of the Slieve Films, the Galtees, and the Galtees are famous for their cheeses and the milk in that area, the Galtee Mountains. And there's also a song about the Galtee Mountain Boys, who were part of the Risings. There's the Ballahora Mountains, and the highest point in Limerick is Galtimore, and it's on the border with Tipperary in the far southern part of the county. But let me ask you another question when it comes to the word Limerick. We know that a limerick, a rhyming 5-line humorous verse, started apparently in Britain in the 19th century, made famous. Do you know any limericks?
Oh, I do know limericks. I can't remember all. There was a nice lady from Limerick. And you can finish the rest of it. I don't know any, actually.
And that's the funny part about it. And they're a comical use. And they say, what is the origin? It's disputed as to, was it how some people who came from Limerick spoke? Or was it something it's kind of like the word blarney.
Yes.
Of what it means, and blarney doesn't mean that, but blarney, we know what it's come to mean. But it's also interesting with the word of saying Limerick. And it said the first limericks appeared in an anonymous in the history of 16 wonderful old women in about 1820. So for some who want to take a look at that. But the actual origin of it is disputed.
Do you think there might have been a hedge school there and that hedge master might have taught the children to rhyme correctly, and it could have spread across the world just from this one hedge master in Limerick?
It's very possible.
There's one other musical connection that I just thought of right now. You know that song, how's it go? Me name is McNamara, da, 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 da. I'm the leader of the band.
Well, McNamara's
band. Yeah, McNamara's. There were three or four brothers, maybe 5, that came from Limerick themselves. They were McNamara's band from County Limerick. Very few people know that too. It was just sort of a ragtag band back east, probably New York. I can't remember now. And that's where McNamara's band really had its roots.
Well, I think we've kind of covered what we have in Limerick. As I say, Limerick is not one of the counties it's filled with history. But today, it's a city, and I've been in the city, had a lovely time in the city. But in the county, there's not that many other places within the county where people would necessarily go and say, oh, we have to see what is there. Except, of course, Brewery, which gave us Eamon de Valera.
Well, and I think the next time I go to Limerick after talking with you, Peter, number one, I want to see those islands in the Shannon and where the Vikings would have settled. And number two, I want to see that airport or air museum. I think that'll be real interesting. And I haven't really paid much attention to that in the past, but that is now on my official travel list just because of this Hedge School podcast. And that's all I really know, unless you've got more to add there, Peter.
Well, I was just going to do, oh, the difference time has made to travelers on their way, seeking out the beauty of our lands. At shrines the children play, and bells ring out to say, thank God we're living just to feel the freedom of each day. Oh, Limerick, you're a lady, your Shannon waters, tears of joys that flow, the beauty that surrounds you, I'll take it with me, love, where'er I go. While waking in the arms of distant waters, a new day finds me far away from home. And Limerick, you're my lady, the one true love that I have ever known.
Well, this has been another day on the road at the Irish Hedge School, and today we took a visit to County Limerick. So ends this chapter of Irish History from the Hedgerow. The entire series is available at www.irishroots.com. We have broadcast series on genealogy, song, local history, as well as original publications for every county in Ireland. The Hedge School in Ireland was totally reliant upon the local community to survive, just as we are here today in our modern-day Hedge School. If you believe in what we are doing for your community, please do send us your support. You can sponsor a session of Irish Hedgerow history for as little as $100 and become a recognized scholar of the hedge. You will also receive a pass or letter of introduction from the instructors here at the school, as was the custom of the hedgerow. So keep the hedge growing with your donation, subscription, or membership. Thank you. We have been available for speaking engagements, exhibits, tours, and educational events since 1984. You can reach us at the Irish Roots Cafe on Twitter and Facebook, and on our homepage at www.irishroots.com, by mail at our U.S. location, the Irish Roots Cafe, Box 7575, Kansas City, Missouri 64116. Leave a message on our phone recorder at 816-256-3360. Copyright 2009.